Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight, Tuesday, September the 17th. That makes this the news for Monday, September 16th, 2024, day 937 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv. Hey, Darlene. Hey, John Ferry. Hey, Cheyenne. Hey, Robert Chapman. Hey, Joe. What do you know? Hey, Eli. PH. The peeps are coming in. Hey, Andy. Hey, Pop. Joe Loud. Diane. Hey, Lars. How you doing, Lars? You still all jet lagged? Have you adjusted? I mean, that's what? That's 8 hours, right? That's a. Hey, Jordy, are we neighbors? Conform. Krillaman. You're the same one that said conform, and you're from Pennsylvania, huh? I can't imagine a worse directive than to conform. Oh, okay, good. I'm glad. Yeah, but that's a good tired, Lars. That's a good tired. Hey, Anthony, Bjorn. Hey, Chef Deb. Well, the peeps are coming in. Guys, we got a lot to talk about. And the biggest thing, of course, is the top line, the place to start, is the question of these ATACMS strikes on troop concentrations in Kursk. Now, everybody here knows I am not an expert. And maybe I have gotten something wrong because I've gotten some pushback on this. But as I understand it, when the United States gave the green light for U.S. weapons to be used in the Kyiv direction, right? The limitation was very specific. It was to repulse the attack in the Kyiv direction. And that's it. That's the only place that we saw the U.S. give Ukraine the green light to use American weapons inside the internationally recognized borders of the Russian Federation. To the best of my knowledge, that is what was said. And further to that limitation, very specifically, the use of ATACMS was prohibited. Now, so no ATACMS at all on the territory of the Russian Federation, to the best of my knowledge. Today, for the very first time, as far as I am aware, we have video evidence from this weekend of ATACMS strikes on troop concentrations in Kursk. There is video. It is very clear. There's about 30 guys. You can count 30 individuals in the video. They are hit by ATACMS clusters. There's other video. There's a video of about a little over, it's 100 plus guys on either side of the same river. So there's maybe 50 guys on one side, 50 guys on the other. It's a night shot, so it's black and white night vision, but very clearly, it is an ATACMS cluster munition that strikes that troop concentration. So we have video evidence from the weekend and claims by the Ukrainian military of ATACMS strikes inside of Russian territory in the Kursk direction on troop concentrations anywhere from 30 to 100 men. Now, ATACMS come in two basic flavors, right? Short range and long range. Could this be a toe in the water, a gray area? These aren't long-range weapons, right? That's what we've been talking about, is use of long-range weapons on Russian territory. These are short-range versions of those weapons. Is it possible that what we're looking at is a toe in the water, a test? Putin says that if we let the Ukrainians use our weapons, our long-range weapons, it will be tantamount to a declaration of war. and the U.S. will be at war with Russia. This is what he says. So if we test this out, right, like boiling the frog, the slow, steady pace of crossing one red line after another, will that limit his response? Hey, Mad Mike. Now, I don't know, right? But I know this much. ATACMS were stricken from the list of weapons that could be used on the territory of the Russian Federation. They are now using ATACMS on the territory of the Russian Federation. This notion of using short-range ATACMS to start makes to me a lot of sense. They can gauge the reaction from the Russians. Now, we all know Zelensky is going to be at the UN General Assembly on the 25th of this month. That's just 10 days away. We know that the Iranians have moved 200 ballistic missiles, sold them to the Russians, and that the Russians are now armed with Iranian ballistic missiles, North Korean ballistic missiles, their own ballistic missiles, and according to the CIA and MI6 chiefs, who had an absolutely unprecedented joint meeting last week and published a joint paper, China is back-channel supporting the development of Russian weapons and the ability of the Russians to reconstitute the army and the equipment that they have lost. Now, given all of that, doesn't it make sense that the U.S. continues to move slowly on this, but is moving? I believe I think what's going on is we're seeing a toe in the water. Let's see what Russia does in response to this. And of course, it makes the Ukrainian advance in Kursk that much more viable. Now, let's talk about that a little bit, because that is an exciting development, boy. A lot of us are aware that last week, or at the very end of last week, the Russians pushed through and retook a couple settlements. There was a lot of talk about this. It was a big deal. Everybody was worried that, the Ukrainians had failed. One guy was scathing, absolutely scathing, when it came to condemning the Ukrainian command for being unprepared for this. I'm not so sure that they were unprepared. I am not so sure. Everybody that follows this channel knows that in that territory of Kursk, there is that river, the same river, right? Everybody knows that the Ukrainians have blown every one of the 3 bridges across that river, trapping about 3,000 Russians in the southern part of Kursk, surrounded on 3 sides by the Ukrainians. We all know this. And with no way to escape with those bridges out. So they keep trying to build pontoon bridges, and the Ukrainians keep blowing them out of the water. Literally. Now, you got 3,000 Russian troops trapped south of the same river. What do the Russians do? They try to free them. They make this push to Snagost, which falls very easily, right? Like in a day. And then they get control. That gives them control over the one highway that goes to Glishkovo. Now, you can't tell me that the Ukrainians didn't know that that was the one fucking highway that went to Glishkovo. Also, you can't tell me that the Ukrainians didn't know that there was a bridge over the River Seine that would let the Russians move down on Snagost. Why would they take out all the other bridges and leave that one bridge that connects to the one road that goes to the southern part of Kursk? That can't be an accident. I don't think that can be an accident. Because what happened next, of course, the only thing that could happen next was all those reserves that came up from the Eastern Front, they get in trucks. They start moving down that highway to reinforce the Southern Front south of the same river. It becomes the sole ground line of communication across which troops and other support supplies can go. It's the only way there, literally, besides helicopter, right? What do the Ukrainians do? They bomb everything that's on the road. They hit them with drones. Just drone after drone after drone, hitting troop concentrations, troop carriers, resupply trucks, fuel trucks. Anything moving on that road was a target. And the Russians knew exactly where that road is and where they all were going. The casualties are said to be enormous. Unprecedented is a word that one Russian mill blogger used. The Russians are not happy. They are not happy about this at all. The whole thing appears to have been a trap, because at the same time that the Russian forces start descending on this southern part of Kursk and start getting picked off, interdicted on the way to the contact line, what happens out on the western edge in Tetkino? The Ukrainians had come across the border and taken up to the river about 2 weeks ago. That advance spans the river today, and they are pushing everybody, the Russians, out of Tetkino. So an advance from the west has begun. That is not the only advance. The southern part of Kursk is the border with Ukraine. What do we see happen there? Bunch of engineering equipment tears the dragon's teeth out of the way, and the Ukrainian army starts coming across the border. On their first day, they push 3 kilometers deep into Russian territory, taking the town of Medvedev, something like that. It's an M town in the southern part of that pocket that increasingly, it looks like, a whole bunch of Russian soldiery is now trapped without any support, without, oh yeah, there's a road to Russia. It's just that it's a highway of death. So I would avoid that if I were you. So the whole thing to me appears to be going according to plan. I think we're going to see the Ukrainians take all of that area under the same river. I don't know how long it'll take. I don't know how hard these guys are going to fight. I have no idea. But the Ukrainians are going to take all that territory. Or they're going to starve a whole bunch of Russians out there and interdict a whole bunch of Russians on the highway before they let it happen. That's certainly what it looks like to me. Again, not an expert. Maybe the Ukrainians fucked it all up and they're just making the best of a bad situation. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. But it looks like they're making the best of it, regardless of what the reality is. Further to this point, I don't think they're going to stop at the River Seine. I think that'll be an initial border, right? That'll give them some security. That'll give them some protection. They'll be surrounded on. They'll have that line will give them a level of security so that maybe they can build some defensive positions or they can secure their positions south of the river, whatever. But just today, the governor of Kursk announced evacuations for the 2 districts directly north of the same river, up to Rilsk. The districts are Kananovsky and Rilsky. So where that town is, that town of Rilsk, which I said was the end point for this campaign, right? Looking at the map, you draw a straight line from the Ukrainian border west of Rilsk. It takes you right down to Sudza. If you take it all the way, it encompasses Belgorod, which is very interesting to me. So those 2 districts have come under forced evacuation order by the governor of Kursk. And if the Russians didn't think that they were at risk, they would not be evacuating everybody. And the Ukrainians are still at least 15 kilometers from the river. They're about 7 kilometers from Glishkovo, which is right on the river. So Kursk is very much in play, and I don't think that the Ukrainians fucked up. I think that they knew exactly what they were doing. I mean, really, you have these troops moving in, the Snegos thing, but there has been no real counteroffensive, and we are now 6 weeks into this thing. Somebody is fucking up and fucking up bad over there in Russia. I don't think anybody can argue with that. Russia remains in the process of moving somewhere between 30 and 60,000 reservists from the Eastern Front to Kursk. This is the point of this operation, was to draw Russian forces out of Ukraine and back into Russia, and it has worked. Make no mistake, it has worked. The Pokrovsk offensive has stalled. Aside from some marginal territorial gains southwest of Donetsk City, where the gray zone has expanded, they've made no progress now in a week. Pokrovsk is not moving. In Kherson, 10 settlements have been attacked. And there is now a new nightmare scenario playing out in Kherson City. The Russian drone operators on the left bank of the Dnipro are now sending drones into Kherson, and they are hunting civilians on the street. I don't think there's any other way to put that. If you're some freak show with a drone and you're targeting babushkas and people doing their shopping, you are hunting your fellow human beings, and you are using drones to do it with. Oh, look at Steven Silver has no idea what the world is actually like. And Ukraine has now moved on Snegos, somebody is saying there, and that there is fighting in the town. Interesting. And that's reported by a Russian Telegram channel. So we got this nightmare of drone operators hunting human beings in Kherson. This is now apparently daily life in Ukraine. In Kyiv, one of those big Fab 500 glide bombs hit a residential building in Kyiv. It unalived a 94-year-old grandmother in her bed and injured 93 others. Zelensky did sign today the law that we talked about before, that the Rada had passed some time ago now, couple weeks anyway, to create the first unmanned systems forces. And so the first drone forces as a branch of the service has been created here in Ukraine. We don't know if it's an ecocide or an accident, but north of Chernihiv, inside of Russia, are the headwaters of the Desna River. This is a big river in Europe. And naturally, like the Dnipro, it's a place of recreation, fishing, swimming, boating, etc. Just north of the Russian border, there is an industrial zone. There appears to have been some contamination, some dumping of toxic waste or poison into the Desna that has resulted in a massive kill-off and unsafe water for recreation. So everybody's being advised not to enter the Desna River north of Chernihiv. Workers there are taking out thousands of kilos of dead fish, snails, crustaceans, birds, etc. It's a nightmare. Now, the worst part is no dolphins in that river. The worst part of this is you're dealing with Russia. So you don't have a partner that will tell you what happened and help you fix it or pay for any of the damages. We don't know if this was an attack, if this was a chemical, biological attack, right? Oh, dump that poison in the river. We'll show them, right? We don't know. Cheyenne's on the side of Echo's side. So, Jacob, there's a river that runs through Russia into Ukraine, right? Nice river. Up in Russia, some industrial plants dumped a bunch of toxins into the water, poisoning, killing everything. We don't know if that was an industrial accident or if it was an ecocide. Ant is saying that he told us that they poisoned from Russia. It's not new. And you may well be right, Ant. The reality is, while we suspect, we can all suspect that it's not an accident. The reality is we don't know. And let's face facts. The Russians don't take care of their shit. Accidents are far more likely to happen when you don't do regular maintenance. So the reality is we don't know. My money's probably on Echo's side too, but let's try to be honest with ourselves. Syria-Ukraine affiliated group attacked Russian UAF base with IED. Not exactly, Shadowhunter. That's not exactly accurate. What happened was the Russians are active in Syria. In Syria, the Russians had a base where they made drones and IEDs, right? That's what the Russians were doing there, right? In support of Yasser Arafat's government. So, wait, I have some notes on this. Let me find the notes. I definitely have notes on this because this was quite a story, I thought, when I read it. Oh, right. The Kyiv Post published exclusive video of the HUR, the Military Intelligence Directorate of Ukraine, operation conducted by the Kimmich group on a Russian drone base in Syria. The base was used for producing drones and IEDs. The video shows a single rifle shot that hit some pre-planted explosives, causing a fire and doing significant damage to the base. So, Shadowhunter, I think that's the story that you're referring to. And it goes to the point that the Ukrainians have said they are going to hunt down Russian terrorists wherever they are in the world. It is amazing to me how this country manages to carry on this war against an opponent that has every advantage, that has been blessed with every advantage, an advantage in manpower, an advantage in equipment, an advantage in ammunition, an advantage in allies who don't need the permission of their people to do shit, but can just enslave their people and make them do the shit they need them to do for their own unenlightened short-term self-interest. But let's face it, right now it's an advantage. While we dither and Ukrainians bleed and die, the Russians have Iranian missiles. Let's be honest. It's an advantage. So while the Russians are doing that shit, the Ukrainians are hunting Russians in Syria, Sudan, Mali, anywhere that they can. Not only that, and I meant to add this to the list. There's been bad rain in Czech Republic, Moldova, Romania. At the very least, those countries are all suffering from severe flooding right now. And Poland. The Ukrainians are sending aid workers to help. Not a lot, right? They're sending 100 to Poland, I don't know, a couple dozen to Moldova, right? But they're participating in spite of everything happening at home, they demonstrate that they are good neighbors in the world. It's astonishing, frankly. And when I see the kind of legislation that's coming through the Rada, there is a focus not just on anti-corruption, but more importantly, on human rights and individual freedoms, which does not exist in the Russian Federation. Let's be frank about that. Okay. Last night's drone attack. Now, last night, I had the great good fortune of speaking to a member of territorial defense today. And in last night's drone attack, there were 53 Shaheds taken out by territorial defense out of 56. 53 out of 56. But in fact, that's bullshit, because another 3 were lost, which I believe, I think we all have good reason to believe that is code word that territorial defense is using for electronic warfare, that these drones suffered because you know this keeps coming up. At least 3 get lost each night. At least 3 get lost each night. So there's something going on there. They don't make it to the target. That means that's 100% interception rate right there last night. God bless territorial defense. But of the 56 Shaheds sent at this country, 23 of them were aimed at Kyiv. The alarm went off. The siren went off last night. I want to say, I don't know, Bobby, what time did we get off the phone? Because I was talking to Bobby last night. It was about 40 minutes before you and I talked, I want to say. So maybe that was about 8:30, 9 o'clock, something like that. So the alarm goes off 8:30, 9 o'clock here, something like that. And the air raid isn't over until 5:30 in the morning. 23 of the 56 Shaheds came at Kyiv, and they came in waves, anywhere from 10 p.m. all the way to 5:30. It was one of the longest, according to the guy at Territorial Defense, it was one of the longest continuous attack cycles since the start of the war. It was, in fact, so long that the Gepards, apparently the Gepards were actively engaged last night. The Gepards had to be moved halfway through the night. Normally, they only move them once a day. But they were concerned that they were in the same spot for so long, firing, that they would now have a firing solution on the air defense. And so they started shuffling the Gepards and moving them to other locations. Yep, you can probably hear the sirens, folks, right? That is tonight's notice that the neighbors will be dropping by and causing havoc. Okay. On the subject of the Trump's second assassination attempt, clearly I think that every reasonable person decries political violence and says it has no place in our system. As an American, I don't want to see some lone gunman make a martyr out of Donald Trump. That is not what I want. I want to live in a world where the American people firmly reject this clown at the ballot box and then sentence him for his crimes. That's, which he's already been found guilty of, right? So don't tell me that I'm full of shit. He's been found guilty on 34 felony counts of fraud, and it is clear that he is guilty of them. So it is time for him to go to jail and be forgotten by the American people as just a fucking hangover nightmare of existential dread that gripped some of us in the wake of 9/11. A xenophobic hate of our fellow Americans that should never have been indulged. Got fired by 81 million people. Exactly. So guys, if you can hear the siren wailing in the background, Just imagine you have kids. Now, a lot of us have kids, right? So, or had kids. My son is grown. He's 22. He just told me yesterday he is moving to Alaska forever. He loves it up there this year. You know, normally he comes home to Jersey City in the summers. But this year he's not doing it. No, this year he is staying in Alaska for the winter. He has gotten himself Alaskan citizenship, and he is not leaving. So a lot of us have had kids, right? They may be adults now. Imagine every time that fucking thing goes off, you got to take your 4-year-old, your 6-year-old, the dog, the cat, the spouse, and you got to go sleep in the bathtub now. Or you got to go out in the hall or down to the shelter. And you have that happen virtually every day for 2.5 years. I mean, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. It's a terror campaign by the Kremlin gremlins to sleep deprive the people of this country, to exhaust them into submission, while at the same time blowing them out of existence. Make no mistake, that's what that sound means. Well, it's not NATO's war, is it? It's Ukraine's war. So on the subject of the Trump assassination, hey, innocent until proven guilty, and no, nobody should want to see Trump unalived in that fashion. Over the weekend, 103 POWs were returned. Now look, this Kursk incursion had a couple of goals. One of the goals was to refill the exchange bank, to get a bunch of Russian prisoners that could be exchanged for Ukrainians. And this weekend, 103 Ukrainian families saw their loved ones returned, some of them who have been in captivity for 2 years. The Azov Steel guys, some of these were... Now, here's the worst thing, right? This is how they torture us out here on the outside with these air alerts all the time. Can you imagine the torture that these guys endured as POWs? Some of them have had no news about the war for 2 years, except to be told that Ukraine no longer existed and was now under the control of the Kremlin. Right? These Azov Steel guys that have been in isolation for 2 years over there, that's the kind of shit they were being told. Ukraine no longer exists. It is now all part of Russia. Now they get out, and Ukraine is holding what looks like about 1,700 square kilometers of Russia now. And wow, it's quite a shocker, boy. It's quite a shocker. Oh, please, Blue Ariel Silk. These people are the worst. Oh, actually, while I see you there, Blue Ariel Silk joined the Patreon at a level that gives her a live sponsorship every month. So tonight's live is brought to you by Blue Ariel Silk, or Blue Silk Ariel, sorry, and Big D. Big D, not to be confused with Big Red. So thank you guys. These guys are the sponsors of tonight's live. And just while I'm stopped making my thank yous, thank you to everybody that supports this channel, especially the moderator team, and Lars and Nightshade. Thank you guys. Okay, so where did we leave off here? In Novorossiysk, I'm loving this shit. Novorossiysk is the harbor across the Black Sea in Russia that the Sevastopol, all the ships that were in Sevastopol, the Black Sea Fleet, what's left of it, escaped to, right? Sevastopol is empty. The Black Sea Fleet is out of there. They are in Novorossiysk. Only, no, they're not. Satellite imagery released over the weekend shows very clearly that the entire naval portion of the harbor is empty. Now, in the same way that the Russians have moved 95% of their planes out of ATACMS and Storm Shadow range, it appears they have moved all their ships, or the vast majority of them, out of ATACMS and Storm Shadow range, because they're gone from Novorossiysk, where they've been hiding. Over in the civilian part of the port, there's one tugboat, one frigate, and a Rapucha-class landing ship, if I'm not mistaken. Something like that, a few warships. That Rapucha-class landing ship is critical. It is one of maybe 3 that are still seaworthy. It may be the only one, because the others have been hit before. It's one of maybe 3 that are still seaworthy. The ferry is gone. There's no more ferrying fuel from Russia to Kursk. The only way to move any kind of supplies, men, equipment, machines, is on that large landing ship. Again, Russia had 5 of them, the big ones. They had, I think they had 3 of the medium-sized ones and 2 or 3 of the small ones too. The small and medium-sized have all been sunk. It's unclear how many of the large ones are left. But once the Kursk bridge comes down, the only way to resupply is with those Rapucha-class ships. And if they're all taken out, Crimea's under siege. And I think that's how that's going to play out. We're going to see them all eliminated and the Kursk bridge taken down and Crimea put under siege. Ukraine has a new drone that flies at 325 kilometers an hour. You know what that means? It means it can catch helicopters. That's what it means. 325 kilometers an hour, it can catch up to an Mi-8. Fly right into that tail rotor, and $15 million goes poof. Poof. Hey, everybody, I want to remind you, please, Trev the Trev. Trev the Trev. Trev the Trev is a member of the International Legion. And I met the guy when I was out in Kyiv. And he's a real good guy, and he wants to get on TikTok. I will, Magical, if you subscribe to Trev the Trev. Go subscribe to Trev the Trev, and then I'll say poof again. Listen, Trev the Trev, this guy, he's in the International Legion. He's a good guy. And he's been in the shit. He was in Chasiv Yar. He was in Donetsk. So this is a guy we want to talk to. This is a guy who, when you ask him a question, he will tell you what he can tell you. And he will tell it to you straight. I would very much like to have him on here, but we got to get him enough followers to go live. So anybody who has yet to subscribe to Trev the Trev, please do me a favor and get on there. Believe me, you want to hear from the horse's mouth, right? I've been in country 18 months. I have vetted so many of these guys, and there's none of them I would put in front of you, right? Because I haven't. Oh, Magical, are you a subscriber? Nice. Thanks, pal. Because I haven't. You know, this guy that tried to assassinate, or whatever, the guy that they have in custody, who may have tried to assassinate, allegedly, the former president. He was a piece of shit scam artist. This much we know. Who posed as a recruiter for the Ukrainian army. I cannot tell you how many shills, grifters, low-life scumbags from the United States of America I have met in this city. In fact, the only actual Nazi I ever met in Ukraine was a fucking American. It's very embarrassing to me. Very embarrassing. But of course, the chaos of a war, the mental delusions of these people about who they are, this is the kind of guy that apparently tried to take out Trump today. Insanity. This guy, Trev the Trev, he's the real deal. That's why I would like to get him in here and hear what he has to say and let him answer your questions. Because you guys have questions that I can't answer, that I do not have the point of reference for them. This guy does. So yeah, give him a follow, please. Trev the Trev. Everybody give Trev the Trev a follow. Norway says more F-16s will arrive by 1/1/25, so before the end of the year. Poland will contribute to the Czech Shell Initiative, but it's unclear how much. Thank you, Robert Keller. Keller or Keeler? U.S. aid has slowed down. U.S. aid has slowed further with less than half of the support delivered in August as any month in 2022 or 2023. There is Vanetta, I meant to talk to you about this. We got to figure out what to do about this. There's $6 billion in aid that is about to expire in just 2 weeks. So Congress has approved some $61 billion in aid, right? The problem is the clock is ticking on some of it. 10% of it is unallocated and will expire in 2 fucking weeks. I don't even know if Congress is in session right now. Are they back from the Labor Day break? I don't know what to do. There's no time for a letter writing campaign, is there? We got to do a phone campaign. Like, everybody's got to pick up the phone, call their congressman, call their senator, call the White House, and say, hey, you guys got 2 weeks to ensure that 10% of the age that people sweated and bled for to get passed this past April doesn't just go down the drain. So, everybody, I implore you, everybody, get on the horn to your Congress people, your senators, and the White House and let them know. That shit bothers me. That kind of bureaucratic bullshit, that really bothers me. Denmark. Any Danes here tonight? Everybody give a big round of applause to the Danes. Denmark paid the Ukrainians to build 18 Bodana self-propelled guns, 155 millimeter guns, and then gave them to the Ukrainians. Goddamn Denmark. I mean, I love the blue cheese. Don't get me wrong. But this is the kind of stuff gets you into heaven. Beautiful. Those Bodanas, they're domestically produced. So they're a product of the Ukrainian defense industry. They started out, they were able to produce 2 a month, then it was 4 a month, then it was 8 a month. Now it is 16 a month. They are churning them out. All they need is somebody to pay for them. $6 billion US, baby. Come on. Get on the horn to Congress. Make sure that doesn't go to shit. Latvia is donating some kit from the 70s and 80s, I guess. British CVRTs. These are armored and tracked vehicles. Anything from ambulances to APCs. We don't know what they're getting. We don't know how many there are. But Latvia has some good armored vehicles that they're going to be sending. Ukraine has stated that Ukraine has started domestic production of 155 millimeter standard NATO shells. So Ukraine had production facilities here for 152 Soviet style. They have converted those to 155 millimeter and are now producing some of their own shells. And no one can tell them what to do with them. Da-na-na-na-na. They're my artillery shells. I'll fucking use them wherever I want. I swear to God, this is how I feel with this bullshit, these bullshit restrictions on Western weapons. It's ridiculous. Germany has agreed to sell Qatar. Now get this, I love this kind of shit. This is real let's make a deal shit. Germany has agreed to sell Qatar a bunch of brand new shiny self-propelled guns, howitzers. Qatar will take its old shitty sand-blasted howitzers, self-propelled guns, and send them to Ukraine. There's a dozen of them, and the first 6 will arrive here within 2 months, is what we're being told. The Russian central bank has raised interest rates to 19%. The director of the Russian central bank said last month, or 6 weeks ago now, when she raised interest rates to 18%, that was it. That further interest rate hikes will not help. And the evidence is there, because rates were raised to 19% and the ruble eroded to 91.4 to the dollar, or about another 2%. Interest rates are now some of the highest in the world. In 2 days, or for me, tomorrow, Wednesday the 18th, the Fed in the United States meets, and it is expected that they will cut interest rates by 0.25, 25 or 50 basis points, something like that. The whole rest of the world is cutting interest rates, easing the monetary supply, while Russia's overheated economy is trying desperately to get it under control. Instead, what they have done is they have just made it more expensive for anybody to buy a car, invest in a business, buy a house, an apartment. Those have suddenly now become out of reach for people because the interest rates make them untenable. Can't afford it. Officially, the rate of inflation in Russia is 9.1%. Hankies, the economics guy at Johns Hopkins, who does a global inflation analysis, says that the real rate of inflation in Russia is probably close to 27%. 27%. We're seeing that reflected in the value of the ruble, again eroded another 2% last night. Combine all of that with the labor shortages, and in the next 6 to 8 months, Russia is headed for an awful rocky crash. It is not looking good. It is not looking good at all. Russia, but they've got their priorities in order. All these problems in the economy, the eroding ruble, the yuan shortage, the labor shortage, all of it. But you know what they've done? They have invested in producing a new textbook, Drone Studies, 34 hours of hands-on labs. This is a technology course that is designed to create a generation of drone experts. Putin wants 1 million drone experts by 2030. And this is how he's getting it, by starting them in 5th and 6th grade on drone studies. This is an obvious attempt to normalize war and a war economy systemically in the culture. It's a sin. It's a sin. They're lining their children up to be targets, to live and die on the front line for Putin's massive and unwarranted ego. While here in Ukraine, they're working on passing marriage equality. Which society would you rather live in? Russia continues to extend efforts at mobilization. Did you get arrested? Hey, go to the SMO. Are you an immigrant? Hey, go to the SMO. Are you out of work? Hey, go to the SMO. And they've been spending a lot of money on this. Last month, in August, they spent 3 times what they normally spend on recruitment advertising. Recruitment is being undermined. And it was badly undermined in August. I didn't know anything about this until today. Two middle-aged guys, right? Guys like me. Well, I guess I'm old now, right? I mean, how many 114-year-olds do you know? So 2 middle-aged guys, right, who had each been in the service as drone operators for over 10 years each, lot of experience. These 2 guys got into a fight with their commander. The commander, as the Russians do, simply sent them on a suicide mission that he knew that they wouldn't come back from, and they didn't. I mean, really, this is real life. This is life in the Russian army. You dare say a fucking word? Go take that hill. No, I know you can't take it. I know you're not coming back. Go take that hill. And you better fucking go, or these Chechens right here will take you out. Right? That's life in the Russian army. 10 years of service, 20 years between them. And this is how they get rewarded. Well, these guys knew that this was the end for them. So you know what they did? They made a video talking about the situation. They made a video and they told everybody not to join. They said that the commanders are completely corrupt. They make up victories. They scapegoat the men for their own failures. And they sell info to Ukrainian intelligence. They sell out the army themselves. How many of these fucking guys are taking Ukrainian money? Is that why the front looks so bad? I'm curious now. This video from Beyond the Grave has apparently gone viral on Russian social media and Telegram channels. And it is seriously undermining the mobilization effort inside of Russia. It's hard to argue with 2 guys who dedicated their lives to the Russian military when they tell you not to join. The Toronto International Film Festival has caved to Russian appeasement, and they are going to run the obscene propaganda film that the Canadian government helped to fund, Russians at War. Let's be clear. Russians at War is not about ordinary Russians in extraordinary circumstances. It is a Russian propaganda bullshit nightmare designed to whitewash Russian war crimes. That's what it is. And it is a sin and a shame that the Canadian government, first, was duped into partially funding it, and second, that the goddamn Toronto and Venice International Film Festivals were conned into showing it. Now, there are 2. Anybody know anybody in Toronto? If anybody knows anybody in Toronto, please reach out to them. There are 2 showings tomorrow, one at 2:30, one at 6:30. I think, let me see, I have it to 2 and 6:30, sorry. 2 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. Toronto time, 2 screenings tomorrow, Tuesday the 17th. Anybody knows anybody in Toronto, reach out to them. Tell them that this is happening. Let's try, somebody's organizing a protest. There's going to be protesters there. No, anybody should be ashamed to walk in that place. Call your friends, Paul. Call your friends. See if you can get them, or if they know anybody that can get out there and hold up a sign that says shame, shame, shame. The blood of Ukrainians is on your hands. Obscene. Now, one of the problems that Europe faces right now, and one of the threats to European security, is the destabilization of local society caused by refugee influxes into these countries. There's no greater single group of refugees than the 7 million Ukrainians that have flooded into Europe. We have some good news about that because God knows in Germany they're suffering, boy. But in the Czech Republic, the taxes to the Czech federal authority paid by Ukrainians from their labor exceeded the public outlay for refugee support by 194.7 million. How about that? The Ukrainians paid $200 million more into the public coffers than they took out for refugee support. Common sense in crazy times is saying that's always the case. I'm not sure that's the case in Poland. But you're not wrong, common sense. It is mostly the case. God knows in the United States, when these maggots talk about immigrants, and I think to myself, the value, the output that we get from the immigrant community, especially from that first generation, the ones born here, the kids of those immigrants, pays itself off every fucking time. Every time. Okay. Zelensky will address the UN. We talked about that. Italy to send a second SAMP-T air defense battery. That's the kind of thing that I was talking about, Vanetta, in our conversation, right? This is an intermediate or medium range or mid-range air defense. While like those Gepards, they're near short range. What the Ukrainians need is long range. They need more Patriots. Boris Johnson and 5 former UK defense secretaries drafted a letter to Keir Starmer urging him to authorize long-range strikes with storm shadows deep into Russia. Budanov says that Russia plans to end the war by end of 2025, early 2026, as the economic and social crises in the RU caused by the war peak. I'm not sure it's going to take that long. I think the economic crises will probably peak. What's this now? Let me see. September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. May. I don't think it's going to be a good May Day in Russia, boy. I really don't. Schultz is in Asia. He's out there looking for cheap energy and labor for migrant workers to come into Germany. The president of Kazakhstan, Tokayev, really disappointed me today. Because, this is the same guy who, when they had what's it called? It's the former Soviet states get together every once in a while and have discussions. And it's always held in Russian, right? Well, the last time that it was held in Kazakhstan, the president of Kazakhstan gave his speech in Kazakh. He didn't do it in Russia, not the CSTO. No, that's not it. It's an economic forum, not a defense forum. Anyway, and it's not BRICS either. It's Soviet, post-Soviet. Anyway, they're at this conference. The Kazakh president does his speech in Kazakh. I remember all the Russian delegation fucking scrambling for their earpieces for the translation. It was beautiful. And I thought maybe Kazakhstan was moving away from Moscow a little bit. But today, the guy said Russia is militarily invincible and that the continuation of the conflict is bad for humanity. And he seemed to lay it at the feet of the Ukrainians that it was their job to fix it. So that was disappointing. We have a real chance in Central Asia to change the world. And it would be a shame to miss it. It would be a shame to miss it. In the Russian district of Primorsky, One of the ministers has suggested, are you ready for this? Where's my buddy Clay? He'll love this. One of the ministers of the Primorsky district government has suggested that women perform childbirth during their work breaks. I'll say that again. I'll just in case you didn't get it the first time. I will repeat that. A minister in the Primorsky district, this is a government official, has suggested women give childbirth during work breaks. So ladies, if you could just schedule that crowning to 10 to 10:15, that would be great. That would be great. And JD Vance is worried about America being run by childless cat ladies. I'll tell you, childless cat ladies would know better than to make that suggestion. Unreal. Now Jonas, this is interesting. Jonas Sigard, who is, I believe is still a member of the Patreon, long-term supporter of the channel. I was in Kazakhstan 2 weeks ago. I can guarantee that many are afraid of what happens if Ukraine, I assume, wins. Interesting. I thought so. I apologize, Jonas. It's hard to keep track. I've lost a bunch of Patreon supporters recently. So if anybody out there could join the Patreon, it would really help to make that up. They're worried if Ukraine loses. I'll bet that there's a bunch that are worried about what happens if they win. Because that's what the reality of life over here is. You have these webs of connection of culture, language, blood, where half of the population, or some portion of the population, is so intimately connected to Russia they can't imagine a world without it. Just like Tokayev said today, Russia is invincible. Nobody's invincible. I mean, that's just bullshit. The Kyiv thing, that means you're a subscriber. Yes, it does. If you see that weird Kyiv thing, that's your badge of honor when you're in here, that you're a subscriber. Okay. Guys, let me thank the moderator team, Cheyenne, Vanetta, PT, Jay, and Travis. Let me also thank the sponsors of tonight's live, Blue Silk Aerials, and Big D. Big D. I don't know if Big D is here or not. Are you a subscriber, Vanetta? I think you're a Patreon supporter. Those are two different things. Ingalls is on fire. That's nice to hear, Ant. I hope so. So, guys, just to be clear, right? There are a number of ways you can support me here. You can join the Patreon. That is my favorite thing for you to do. If you only have $5 a month that you can kick me without it interfering with your other charitable giving in your life, then the best thing you could do is join the Patreon. There is also a TikTok subscription, and I have about 30 subscribers on TikTok subscriptions. I don't like it as much because TikTok takes half the money, right? But it's good to have subscribers on TikTok because I feel like they work with you more. Certainly, I don't get my appeals rejected as much as I did before I had subscribers. That much I think is true, or something like it. And then the other thing to do is you can sponsor a live. And to sponsor a live, all you have to do is send $50 on PayPal or more, and you will get a live sponsorship. Tomorrow night, our sponsors will be one of the Patreon supporters and Bobby, my buddy there in San Diego. Tonight, it is Big D and Blue Ariel Silk. So that is the way. Now, just to be clear, none of that money goes to Ukraine or to charitable contributions in any way. All of that money pays my rent, keeps me fed, and takes care of my bills. It keeps me in Ukraine. And I'm extremely grateful for it. And I hope it shows in the work that I try to do for you guys every night with the news and try to make sense of it and what's happening over here, because it is complicated. And with the videos that I produce that try to highlight life here in Ukraine. There are over 100 people that support me. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't think I ever had 100 people that supported me in my life. It is extremely gratifying. And I work very hard to make sure that your investment is worthwhile. And I hope it shows. Well, no, Ethan, you could. You could write a check. Thanks, Arn. Thanks, Bernard. Okay, but look, it's not about me, right? We have some... Thank you, Jonas. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Bobby. Bobby will be the sponsor tomorrow night. Hey, I was just going to say, all right, enough about me, right? Because this is not about me. This is just housekeeping that has to be done so that the channel can keep doing what it does. And that is disambiguate Russian disinformation, keep Ukraine in the news, and serve as a vector by which other people that want to support Ukraine can meet each other and they can collaborate. That's what this channel is for. And I hope we do some of that. Okay. Remember, Trev, please give him a follow. And it is well past 1 o'clock in the morning here. So I'm going to call it a night and go to bed. Does anybody have any final thoughts, questions, comments, points of observation, or personal need? Thank you, Cheyenne. Big thanks to the moderator team. Big thanks to Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps public group on the Book of Faces, where I will post this after we're done here. Jonas, thank you for all your... Dude, you've been around. You must be one of the first 20 Patreon supporters, I think. Maybe even top 10. Like, your foundational kind of support for this channel. Night, Anthony. Thank you, Esteban. I think so. I think so, pal. I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to keep track now. Like I said, I have about 130 people who together mean that I have a monthly income of about $1,200. And that's you know, with the live sponsorships, you know, I can pay my bills mostly. I was telling Bobby last night on the phone, I was going through change looking to buy a bag of potato chips. I did. I had to look. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it is a small sacrifice compared to the sacrifice that the Ukrainians are making. I'm not bleeding. Yeah, there's drones and missiles coming in, but nobody's shooting at me personally. I have just as good a chance as any one of the 4 million people here to wake up in the morning. So anyway, that's it, Ant. That is it. And life is for the living, brother. Life is for the living. Hey, Mel, how you doing? I was just about to sign off. Thank you, Cheyenne, for all you do. Especially that voodoo that you do so well. Good night, Mel. All right, mes amis, ça va? Ça va bien? Bonsoir. Buenas noches. Dobra noche. Good night.